Drake stans are coming back outside. I've talked to a couple of Drake stans recently, and they're on the Drake defense of like, okay, he's dragging it. What does
Yeah,
this
he's dragging
mean?
it. They're saying he's dragging it.
And to me, I think it's interesting because this is very much like a rap thing. I think in sports, this exists somewhat, but again, you don't choose who you go against. There's not a bigger like W in rap than defeating the biggest rapper.
Yeah.
And I think that this win that Kendrick has against Drake is the biggest win in hip hop history. And so he's acting like that's what it is because that's what it is.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Soundbites, part of the Album Mode podcast. We're talking about the music, the culture, the internet, and sometimes the legal disputes. And how those four things now all intertwine to create the music culture that we have today. My name is Lamar Grant, aka King Grant, aka The Bunny, and I'm here joined by my esteemed co-host, co-creator, Adriel Smiley, adrielsmiley.com, the Godfather, Adriel Smiley. We have come back to Soundbites to talk about something that we have been following this entire year. The Drake and Kendrick beef has continued. Kendrick Lamar has held his Juneteenth concert, which was the Kendrick and Friends pop-out concert.
Sometimes you gotta pop out.
Sometimes you have to pop out a shoulder because that's my favorite part of that entire song. That was one of those lyrics that I just would just say out loud.
That and then the other one from Euphoria.
Yeah.
What is it, the braids?
Yeah.
I just can't get enough of those two.
Kendrick Lamar with the Quotables, which is kind of rare.
I actually didn't realize it was being streamed until halfway through the concert. And someone texted me and was like, Tyler just came out. And I'm like, okay, sure.
No, that's a big deal if you're underestimating that.
And I kind of was unsure what they were talking about. There was just no context. Like, just exclamation points, Tyler just came out. And I was like,
huh?
Tyler who? And then I started watching. And I think, like, my main takeaway from this pop out, of course, there's Not Like Us playing 40,000 times. That was very fun. We were freaking out with each other.
Yeah.
Basically every time it got played. But the main thing is seeing all the LA artists that came out beforehand, part of Mustard's set.
Yeah.
And it's like having that all be just LA, that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's really showed how impactful and how important the West Coast is to just hip hop in general. You have people like YG popping out, which is a little bit of a stab at Drake. Just his existence being there was a stab at Drake because Drake literally mentioned him in his song, being like, yeah, YG's on my side. Doesn't appear that way.
Nope.
Tyler, the Creator, showing up, huge pop. Like one of the bigger, probably the biggest.
I was gonna say the biggest other than Kendrick.
Yeah, other than Kendrick. Tyler, the Creator is a big deal. Remember we were talking about Big Three, and if if J. Cole wasn't in Big Three, we were like, Tyler, the Creator is probably.
I was mentioning this afterwards. Tyler, the Creator of the most recent artists, has sold the most of anyone who was on that stage.
Yeah.
And to think of, like, people forget he's from LA sometimes, that he's not seen as like an LA artist in that way. It was cool to see him get that love because there's almost a version of LA and a part of hip hop culture that doesn't care about sales a whole lot.
Absolutely.
And there's a group of people who, to them, YG is way bigger than Tyler, the Creator.
Same with The Game.
And it's not. We'll talk about The Game later. He wasn't there, but I think that Tyler has now kind of crossed over in a way that many artists don't, where it's like you're popular, you have the sales, and the people who like hip hop who are not part of hip hop are your fans.
Yeah.
Tyler now has crossed over where if you saw that crowd, a lot of hip hop was in that crowd, and they got really excited for Tyler. So that was my favorite. But I think my favorite person who came out before Kendrick was Roddy Ricch.
Yeah.
I was happy to see Roddy Ricch.
Me too.
And to see everyone go up for those songs. And it just reminded me, like, he still is a living legend at this point. I think that he has 4 or 5 songs. He could probably have like a set in the club 20 years from now. Now he's young and has a full career ahead of him still, but to have 4 or 5 songs that can go up basically anywhere at this point in his career, a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah, I think that when The Box came out, it kind of exploded him beyond who he actually was, to be quite frank about his artistry.
Yeah.
The Box was such a massive hit. And then you listen to like Feed the Streets 1 and Feed the Streets 2, and it was making more regional music.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. It's just
Mhm.
like it was more LA centric in what he was doing. It was more focused on that sphere. So when the box got released, it was like, okay, it was cool. Like it was cool for the album. It was cool for, that section, but then it exploded into literally the biggest song of 2019 or 2020,
Yeah.
right? So it was like right after Old Town Road, the box, right? And the box was massive for a long time.
I'll never forget the box because that was one of the songs that was really big right when the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And that was my last, pre-pandemic birthday. And the box was a song that went up
Mm-hmm.
when we went out. So I'll never forget that. But you're right. To see him get to where he's at now is so cool because I remember one of the big moments for him was Die Young and him doing that like at big colleges or on festival stages and having the whole crowd sing the whole song. And to think now that he's not even really doing Die Young in his set.
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of how big the box became because Die Young was box for the box. And Die Young was a huge song that you could turn the song off and everyone singing the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And to see him continue to do that is pretty cool. Who was your favorite person you see come out? Don't include anyone from Kendrick's set.
Okay.
We'll get to that. But before Kendrick came on stage, who was the person who you were like, I'm so amped to see them?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm basic,
Mm.
and Tyler the Creator was just. I mean,
That's not basic. That's a good answer.
I think that Tyler the Creator getting recognized in that way
Mm.
was awesome because he does kind of exist in his own world that he created.
Yeah.
He totally created it himself. So he kind of exists in this own world. So for him to be included in this way where he stands next to YG, stands next to Roddy Ricch and
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar, was just cool to see because you can be this weird, eccentric artist, but he's gotten to the point where, yeah, he's like, he's a fixture, period. Here, he's not just like an internet dude because there was a point in time,
Mm-hmm.
big internet dude. Right now, he's just like, I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
I'm just a guy out here
Mhm.
that has extreme recognition. Again, the way the crowd reacted to him, and he wasn't even playing like a huge song when he came out.
Yeah.
It was "What's Your Name," which is still a really, really good song, but it wasn't like one of his massive tracks.
Yeah, I was surprised that the crowd do the words like that. That
Yeah.
was something that really took me off guard. I was like, damn, okay.
Mhm.
So the crowd impressed me. Big up to you guys in LA because I didn't see that coming where they would know all the words to What's Your Name.
Yeah.
I kind of had my moment where I was like, okay, I'm happy now. I could shut this off. Because I said this to you before, it's something we've mentioned on the pod. I've been listening to Euphoria a lot since that came out. It came out the day we recorded and we were requesting the replay value.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, shit ton of replay value. And I wanted him to come out, Kendrick Lamar, to start his set with Euphoria. And he did exactly that. Now, he kind of flubbed a couple of times,
Mhm.
kind of getting his footing, of course, first time performing a 6-minute song. But when he came out to Euphoria, I was like, we're good.
Wow.
Like, let me know when not like, because I've seen Kendrick Lamar 3 times in concert.
Mhm.
So I've seen him and J-Rock perform together. I've seen all these songs live already. Euphoria is the one song I've never seen live.
Okay.
So seeing that was pretty cool. And I love that he came out to that and set the tone because that brought the energy of like, yo, we're not running from that. This is really happening.
Yeah, I do think that before it was like kind of like a party.
Mhm.
Everybody's having a good time. But then when he plays Euphoria, it's like, this is actually the reason why we're here. For real, though.
Violence!
Yeah.
Violence always!
So he's like, the real reason why we're here. I know everybody's having a great time and it's Juneteenth and everybody has the day off.
Yep.
Most people have the day off. We're having a great time, partying, all this stuff. I'm actually here to, I'm bringing the dagger. Like I already killed Drake in the beef.
Yeah.
But I'm making sure, like, I'm stabbing through the coffin. The dagger is stabbing through the coffin to make sure. So I thought that was really interesting choice. I think that when he played Not Like Us 5 times,
Mhm.
6 times was without anybody actually saying anything,
Mhm.
but 5 times in a row was, honestly, it was so funny that he did that. Like, I was like, okay, he's obviously going to do it at the end of his set. He did all
Mhm.
these other songs, even swimming pools. He did swimming pools.
Mhm.
But this is at the end of the set where he's like, Not Like Us. Dr. Dre's introing it for him, which is a big time handshake, a big time Passover. And for him to perform it one time, he did only like half the song, then
Yeah.
half the song again, and then he did the full song, then the full song again. I'm like, damn, like he's really here, just really trying to make sure every single person knows, every single person that if you tune into the stream, you're making sure you hear that shit 4 or 5 times, and the crowd was totally into it. That was
every single time.
Every time, yeah.
I think the crowd probably had a more hand in him doing it so many times
too,
than
I
he did.
agree.
The crowd, like every time the song stopped, the crowd was giving them the energy.
Yeah, they're like encore. You hear them shouting encore. They're trying to shout it again. It was crazy.
No, it was wild. My joke that I was making while that was happening is Kendrick is trying to make Drake turn his TV off. Like he's just trying to bait Drake and turn his TV off. He's like, Drake, I know you can't watch this. One more time. Because I think that this moment for Drake, really, this is like, you called it like him like stepping on the coffin, like, you know, putting him more into the dirt. I think it's twofold. One, of course, not like us. Having 30,000 people scream certified pedophile, this is not going to go over well. No matter what's true or not true, it's just not a good look. And then secondly, I think showing how united LA is, I think that's something that Drake can't do because he's beefing with Toronto right now. And so I think like having, of course, every gang member on stage together, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But even TDE, as Kendrick leaves and becomes PG Lang officially, Keem is one person I thought I would see there.
Yeah, me too. I was surprised he wasn't there.
That was interesting. But showing all of TDE together, for anyone who's our age and kind of grew up with all these guys, that's a big moment to see all of them on stage. Now, I think that's something that's rare. Like, they toured together right before the pandemic, and I got to see all of them on tour. That was pretty cool. But see them all on stage together at once, that's something that Drake can't really do.
Yeah, and that was really interesting because you see this like collective, being like, this is, you know, even though I think we mentioned this before we reviewed Kendrick Lamar's music or other people's music, it's like Ab-Soul and those guys, they were technically ahead of Kendrick Lamar when they first came out.
Yeah.
And now Kendrick Lamar is like Kendrick Lamar writ large. For him to still be like, these are still my guys. Even in like, you know, I'm at my zenith, basically. I don't know if Kendrick Lamar is gonna get.
No, this is it.
This might be it, right? So for him to still be like, these are still my guys. I'm still doing it for the city. I'm still doing it for everybody that showed up. I'm still co-signing every single person that shows up on the stage, right? I still having that spotlight. Even though that the moment is technically about him, I'm still giving that spotlight to every single person that comes on before me, right? So I think it was a huge, huge deal for him to do that. Something that Drake, at a point in time, could have done. And I would say at the beginning of OVO Fest, was kind of doing that. And then he even had that festival where he had like all like the old Canadians coming on, right? But right now, I do not think that Kendrick or Drake could do that right now. I think there's so much animosity in the city. I don't think he could do that right now.
And I think in two ways, like I actually mentioned this before, that it was giving OVO Fest the way Kendrick was doing the pop out. And it's funny because like no one really mentioned that, but like this is like what Kendrick did with the pop out, Drake has done almost every year with OVO.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, it's like I could see how the Drake fans get to their defense and be like, we always do this. This is what we do. But I think the main difference is when you look at TDE, all those guys stand alone. Like TDE, those artists under Kendrick have full-fledged careers outside of Kendrick Lamar. Like they don't need to have him on their singles. They don't need to have him to make them pop. Like they can have their whole rollout without Kendrick being involved, basically at all.
Yeah.
And that's not really an OVO thing in the same way. I think this time around, Party did that, and that's what made this rollout more interesting. Rollout.
Yeah.
Dropping the album cover. But I think that's the difference is the unification of the West and LA and TDE. Drake doesn't have that right now. And so when I talk about the aftermath of like what this means for Drake, we're in this era of the Drake stans are coming back outside. I've talked to a couple of Drake stans recently, and they're on the Drake defense of like, okay, he's dragging it.
He's dragging it. They're saying he's dragging it.
and to me, I think it's interesting because this is very much like a rap thing. I think in sports, this exists somewhat, but again, you don't choose who you go against. There's not a bigger like W in rap than defeating the biggest rapper.
Yeah.
And I think that this win that Kendrick has against Drake is the biggest win in hip hop history. And so he's acting like that's what it is because that's what it is. And so I think going forward, like this is something where you kind of have to let this ride out. And as well, like Kendrick is the number one guy. And the number one guy dictates the temperature of hip hop, the climate of hip hop, how people will sound going forward, what our strategies are. And so Drake has to sit back and let Kendrick run the board.
Yeah.
And that is what I got from the pop out concert. Is like Kendrick is the clear number one. It's not 1A, 1B. It's clear number one. And this next few months, when we talk about the video being shot, an album coming, this is his time to kind of like set the future in motion of what's to come for hip hop.
Yeah, I do think that the the pop out concert was
Mhm.
phenomenal. I do think that one of the biggest problems that you're seeing with Drake right now is like the unification effect is not there because the weekend is from the same city as him.
Yeah.
The weekend is literally top 3 biggest pop stars on planet Earth.
Yep.
And he cannot be like, yo, let's do a one, like a concert, me and you.
Mhm.
Can't do it.
Mhm.
Because they're in the middle of he's part of the feud.
Yeah.
The weekend is part of the feud. So that shows like how isolated Drake, Drake makes all this music about being paranoid and isolated and doesn't trust people. Now you're really seeing like how much he's isolated himself
It's super real.
from everybody else, where everybody else sees him with animus. Like people look at him and are like, fuck this guy, you know what I mean? And he has not been able to engender that collective fanfare that Kendrick Lamar has been able to do. The only thing that I think was missing from the pop out concert, Vince Staples. That would have been, I mean, he's on tour, I believe. I think he's in Europe.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit heartbreaking for me personally because that was basically like the Vince Staples like scenario. Like everybody from
That would
every
have been
hood,
perfect. Yeah.
everybody from every hood, is showing up. There's a lot of gang reconciliation that was happening. Vince Staples is all about that, right?
And I think too, like what I think is the main difference, because Vince is probably the person, him and Keem, that you're like, okay, who should we have seen that we didn't
Yeah.
see? But I think that like if you talk about Toronto doing the same thing,
Mhm.
it's not going to be all rap acts.
Yeah.
Even someone like Tory Lanez, if he was going to represent Toronto, is more an R&B act than a rap act.
Mhm.
This is like LA is being rap only, not including their pop stars.
Yeah.
Not
No
include-
SZA.
not including their singers.
Yeah.
This is rap only. And so from a rap standpoint, we are miles behind as Toronto to what LA has done, their influence, what they've created. I have one more question for you about the aftermath
Yeah.
of this. What do you place in terms of expectations on Kendrick's album coming up?
Ooh. That's a great question. I think that this might be the most like popish album that he'll probably ever make because I think
That's interesting.
the previous albums were so thought out and there's like so much, you remember, there's like a lot of time that goes in between them, right? Usually like 4 years, 3 years, 5 years in between them. And that's how you get a Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers where it's so dense. So much thought goes into it. Same with like To Pimp a Butterfly, so dense. Now this is 1 year after Mr. Morale, I think. And he's on he has like the biggest, even though it's not the chart topping #1 currently to date, this is the biggest song out right now. Like,
Oh yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, and I think that because of like the time period is like the time span is so short, and because of the song being as popular as it is, I would be pretty surprised if like the next album that comes out, which is probably coming this year, to be like the super dance, super thoughtful about all this stuff. Like I'm pretty sure it's gonna be closer to Damn than it is to Pimp a Butterfly.
I wanted to ask you that because when I've been asking this to people since the concert, because that's what I've been thinking about. Like Kendrick's next album is probably under the most pressure of any album he's ever put out. Because if this album is not good, and Kendrick
It's probably gonna be good.
he hasn't put out a bad album, but I think if it's closer to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers,
Yeah.
that's not going to work because I think a lot of people didn't like that project. And he doesn't have the luxury of having all the time in between where you're just begging for Kendrick.
Yeah.
And I'll ask a lot of people, like, what do you think is going to be his next project? What are you thinking? What's going to be like? And more people have said to me the actually opposite of what you said.
Really?
They see more to Butterfly, him going more in that direction. I actually agree with you more. And I agree with you more because the rumor was that the album was done before this beef even happened. And so I'm not taking into account him making songs to fit this energy. I think that this energy is just going to help us get to the next place.
Right.
But the rumor was that the album was already done. But I wanted to bring that up because Not Like Us, of course, is the hottest song out right now. But this is a unique hit in Kendrick's discography because Money Trees became a hit in retrospect. At the time, it was an underground song. All the Stars with him and SZA not really a traditional Kendrick song in
Yep.
any way. More as a song.
Humble.
Humble. I think Humble is one of those hit songs that many people say is like not one of his better songs.
Yep.
And then Love with him and Zachary.
Mhm.
I think that's again very much like not really like it can be a Kendrick song because he has done songs like Sing About Me and songs like that,
Mhm.
but still not traditional Kendrick song. And so this is the first hit song he's had that feels like closer to what a Kendrick song sounds like.
Yeah.
And even though he's not always living in that mustard on the beat ho place, um, this feels like closer to what a Kendrick song sounds like as a hit song because that's something he hasn't had yet. Most of his hit songs are like, well, if you like this, listen to what he really does,
Mhm.
and this is the closest to like what he really does. So I
Right.
think this is gonna help us lead into the album because this is like a new place for him where he may have hits that are more like Kendrick Lamar songs.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting too. I do think that yeah, I'm excited for the next album. I think the music video for Not
Mhm.
Like Us is going to the music video is gonna have more of a To Pimp a Butterfly vibe where it's just like very black,
Mhm.
very neighborhood related,
Yeah.
very LA focused because he's shooting it. It looks like it's in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in LA and Watts.
So I think that this is kind of like an old school rollout, to be honest. The way that the single comes out, right? And you're hearing the single multiple times. Then the music video comes out like a month. It's like been what, a month, 2 months later?
Yeah.
It's a month, 2 months later. Then the album, like this is what rollouts used to look like in like 2003.
No. 100%. 100%.
You'd have your single, then your music video comes out a month later, 2 months later, then like 2, 3 months later,
It's the MTV rollout.
yeah, the album comes out, right? So that's what I mean when I say like I think it's like he's doing like an old school
Mhm.
release cycle. This is what pop stars do, basically.
Yeah.
And Kendrick Lamar, I hate to break it to a lot of people, not really a pop star. So to see this rollout has been interesting.
I'm very interested to see how this next 6 months goes for Kendrick and hip hop as a whole. And what I've been really paying attention to is the top songs on the charts that are hip hop.
Hmm.
And since Not Like Us, what have been the top songs that have charted that are hip hop? And there really haven't been those big charting songs that
Yeah.
have been hip hop songs. And of course, we're kind of caught up in the morass of what this is and still basking in his win. But I think that I'm interested to see like, will there be those hits now that Drake has kind of stepped aside? And
Right.
Kendrick is the leader in that because he's the one who has the hit. He has made hits before.
Mhm.
I don't think we think of Lamar as a hit maker.
Correct.
So who will fill that void? And so I'm paying attention to see. I don't think Kendrick will do it. I think he'll have some other hit songs, of course, just from him being a big artist. But I don't see him being the new.
And the new hitmaker. I don't even. You think? I don't even think sees it. I don't think he sees himself having to carry that weight. I don't think he's. He isn't so
Mm,
much. We talk about like the size of hip hop,
yeah.
and he's like much more of like the written and much more serious form of it.
Mm.
I don't know if he's like, okay, now it's my turn to grab the hitmaker mantle and I have to pull that as well. I don't think he sees it that way.
I don't think he sees it that way either. But I do think that someone is gonna have to grab that mantle, and I
Mhm.
think that whoever does grab it is gonna be the new Drake in a sense.
Right.
Where I told you before, Kendrick is kind of the anti Drake because I don't need hits. I make real rap. Who's going to be that new person who we say as this is not real rap? They're the hit maker. Who's it going to be? And I'm interested to see because I think that a lot of these guys who do have hits don't have a long history of making hits that don't feature Drake. And these are songs that maybe don't need Drake personally. I think, a song like Wait For You with Thames and Future and Drake.
Yeah.
Drake has a good part on that, but I think that would have been a great song with just Thames
Mhm.
and Future. But it's not. It does have Drake on it. And it was Future's last big song.
Yeah.
Until Like That, which is about Drake.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see where Kendrick lands in this. And I wonder the temperature that he sets. Like, is he going to do what he does so successfully that people don't even try and make hits? And it's almost looked at as way more corny now
Hmm.
of someone searching those hits because, he's going to set the tone. I'm very, very curious because in the past, he has clearly searched for those hits.
Yeah.
And he's done that before and successfully. Not like Kehlani,
Yeah.
but more successfully. So I just wonder where he's at right now. I'm with you. I think it's gonna be more like Damn. That's my guess. But I do think that this is the album that's gonna be a very, very polarizing album for hip hop. Because I think that if this album is subpar, It's gonna be a lot of he's overrated. We're
Oh.
gassing it, and I think that Mr. Morale was akin to that. I thought the album was actually good,
Me too.
but I think it was good in the I'll listen to this a couple times
Hmm.
sort of deal, or good in the if I'm feeling like I want therapy and don't want to actually pay for therapy, I'll listen to this project. And I think Damn is more in the like, nah, I'll run this over and over and over again. And I think he needs something like that. I don't think if he gives us something that's overly thoughtful and I know it's good, but I don't want to bang that. That's not gonna fly here. And so
Yeah.
I wonder how he rides that line of keeping it authentic, but still coming with some bangers.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm curious to how much it's probably gonna go number one, like no matter
Yeah.
what.
But you're saying how much is it gonna sell first week?
Yeah, and I'm also curious about the latest artists now who are dropping their
Mhm.
discographies and be like, "Hey, do you want to just buy my shit for like $1 billion?" Literally.
Yeah, Queen's catalog. Is I'll say this: there's been multiple reports. One report said it's just short of 900 million.
Hmm.
Another report says 1.27 billion. Either way, shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Shit ton of money. And the most that we've seen from an artist selling their whole catalog. I think that this new phenomenon is actually the right way to go. This is one of the few things in the music industry that's actually been done right.
Wow.
Um, because I saw this list of a bunch of artists who have sold their catalogs as well. And what I think this list does well, shout out to startlemusic.com,
Hmm.
is they have the Spotify followers beside the artists and how much they've sold. And I think that that is a big part of it because like these legacy acts who are from the era that Queen is from,
Hmm.
they're not doing great on Spotify these days. Like they
Okay.
have some big songs, but of course a much younger
Give me
audience.
some people.
So we'll start at the top. Michael Jackson,
Okay.
600 million. 300 million. I mean, sorry, 30 million. 300 million would be number one. But
Yeah.
30 million on Spotify. Bruce Springsteen, his sold for 500 million,
Yeah.
6 million
Wow.
on Spotify. Kiss, 300 million, 9 million on Spotify.
Hmm.
Phil Collins and Genesis, 300 million, 8 million on Spotify. And then a couple more. Bob Dylan, 300 million. He sold his for 6 million on Spotify.
Right.
Tina Turner sold hers for 300 million as well, 3 million on Spotify.
Wow.
And so when you think of these like Spotify numbers, it's like what your music is going to go for is only going to go down at that rate.
Yeah.
So I think these artists all made a great move.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when it comes to when you're like a legacy act at this point, if you can get seriously like $300 million for your catalog, that's a pretty lucrative deal because you probably will never in your lifetime, probably in multiple lifetimes of your like of your lineage, probably not gonna see that much money just because there's so many things you have to do to like get placements,
Yeah.
people sampling your music, get the money off the sample, people interpolate, all this like shit that like happens that will extract value just from the discography sitting there, but people have to like reach for it, or you have to like try to be you have to be the person out here trying to get it into a movie, get it into a TV show, get it into a commercial, all this type of stuff. So there's a lot of extra work that is happening to accrue that value. So if you're gonna just like, bro, I'm gonna sell the entire discography for like $500 million. Where do I sign? Where do I sign? And where's my Lamborghini?
Yeah. And the artists who are holding out, I want to talk about them because
Mhm.
Russ has mentioned it that he's been offered some money. I think it's around 40 million, he said.
Yeah, it's not worth it at that much.
For his catalog. But I think about those artists who are still very, very active and what you want to price your catalog at, because the whole thing now is independence, knowing your worth.
Yeah.
And it's like, will you get that money later on for your catalog?
Hmm.
And I think about the people who are, pseudo active or active, who's on the catalog. Katy Perry, 225 million.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber, 200 million.
That one is weird to me because does that mean Justin Bieber's just done?
No, I think every deal is different, but from what I know, the majority of these deals, people still have rights to their music, so they'll
Right.
still get some royalties, still have some licensing power, but the masters just doesn't belong to them anymore.
Right.
I thought Justin Bieber would be worth more. I thought that honestly,
Mhm.
but I think again, like, when are you gonna get a check for 200 million? like all at once.
Facts.
I think that you maybe make that in a year if you have a great tour. You know, if you have a great tour, maybe you make that if you have a movie in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that gets you close, and you do that all in the same year.
Yeah.
And go number one.
And go number one.
But I think that especially, and I think a big part of this is the pandemic as well. I think the pandemic played a part in this because, especially these legacy acts, your money's from touring. I think about someone like Celine Dion, who's made over $300 million in Vegas. Obviously, America's a different place. They didn't really believe in the pandemic as much. But when you can't tour and there's no shows to do, you're like, how am I going to make this money I would have made otherwise? And so I think these artists are doing the right thing. My question is there an artist you could think of that would be more than Queen? Because Queen right now is number one, we'll say 1.27 billion. Is there an artist who would, garner more money than that, do you think?
I don't know who owns it, the catalog right now, but the Beatles probably will sell for
Michael Jackson owns it.
So, but it's still the estate, right? Because Michael Jackson's dead.
So do you think that was part of the price? Because he's owned it since he was alive.
Right. So maybe, but I'm just saying, like, currently today, if it were to resell.
Oh, I could resell right now. You think that'd be more than Michael Jackson?
Probably, yeah.
Interesting.
I think so.
Interesting.
It's a maybe. I mean, I'm surprised by Queen going for $1 billion just because I'm like, I respect Queen, but I'm like, I respect Queen, but let's not get it twisted. I respect Queen, but I'm like, well, Michael Jackson, the Beatles were bigger than Queen.
Well, I think if you're going by just who was the biggest artist, Michael Jackson, I think would be number one in terms of like what he's achieved and being more in the TV era. But I think the things that we're talking about is syncing.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of songs being synced,
the Beatles.
Queen is number one. We Are the Champions. We Will Rock You.
Yeah.
Another One Bites the
They're
Dust.
playing all that shit in the
Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like that is why this is 1.27 billion is like they have all the arena music, all the movie music.
Yeah.
So I don't know
events.
I don't know if anyone has so many songs that fit this that would be above. But Michael Jackson and the Beatles are both really good guesses.
Yeah, the Beatles I feel like can get synced in a lot of movies. A lot of movies, a lot of TV shows. Anything that wants to have like songs in the background where it's like, like a whimsical or discovery sound, those type of, that's where I think it would get synced.
You know what's funny? I actually think the Beatles are probably lower in this because the Beatles sound, you would almost rather just get a nondescript, non-copyright music. And for some of these Queen songs, you want the real We Will Rock You.
Yeah.
If you have a fake We Will Rock You, that's not gonna, you know what I mean? Like in the Beatles sense, it's like a fake Beatles might do in this scene. But if you have a fake We Will Rock You, it's gonna sound super corny.
Okay, yeah.
And so I think there's something there. My thing is, what is gonna happen with all these being sold? Like I think right now, we haven't seen this kind of come back in any negative way.
Yeah, that's true.
But the questions is out there. Like what's gonna happen from this? Is something bad gonna happen? I do think that what is gonna be great from this is a lot of legends are gonna have more money without having to tour. I was recently watching a little documentary on Bon Jovi talking about their tour they did right after COVID.
Yeah.
And first of all, old, very old.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm sure they're making $1 million plus a show and it's very lucrative for them. But if you're an old band like that, that's the only way for you to make that kind of money. When before you could put an album out and maybe make $20 million, you can put an album out now. If you make $2 million, you're lucky.
Yeah.
And so I think this is an avenue where acts like that, it doesn't have to be touring is the only way you make that money. If we want to do something that's going to make us a bunch of money, maybe we can sell our catalog. Of the hip hop acts, there hasn't been as many that have sold their catalog. But I think it's obvious that the top names, the Jay-Z, the Nas's. A group that I thought about a lot is Outkast.
Yeah, Hey Ya.
I think in spin class today, I heard a version of Hey Ya sounded like it was done by Matchbox 20. So yeah, Hey Ya's up there for sure.
What a call out, Matchbox 20. What a time.
Yeah, so I think Outkast would be up there. Again, Hey Ya, Roses, The Way You Move, Aquemini.
Yeah.
And I think the other one would be some of the 90s groups that have that like boisterous 90s hip hop sound, like DMX, I think. His catalog would go for a lot.
50 Cent, probably.
50 Cent would go for a lot as well. I think Tribe.
Yeah, that one's it's weird because I feel like the modern day listener is not listening to that much Tribe, but like if you just tick it up like maybe
Mm.
20, 30 years. They're like, yeah, Tribe Called Quest's music is gonna go crazy.
And I think that's the actual market for these prices, because most of these artists are legacy acts.
Yeah.
The two newer acts, Justin Bieber and Katy Perry, are from kind of a past generation.
Mhm.
And I think when it comes to syncing, especially in TVs and movies, newer songs don't do as well, because there is that over 35 audience that's watching these that may not know the latest from Billie Eilish.
True.
But they will know DMX. so
Very true.
so I think that group of artists from that time period, this is their time to strike.
Yeah, so I think that it's gonna be interesting. I also wonder about like somebody like Avicii or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
When it-
Interesting.
yeah, when it comes to those like huge, like that EDM era, the 2010s, be very interesting.
Yeah, that's I guess another question. We talked about it with AI, but I guess if it's here too is the deceased artists.
Mhm.
Like, is this another avenue for their estates to get some money? Like,
Yeah,
MF Doom's family, Juice WRLD's family.
Yeah.
Is this the move? Because Juice WRLD's a fairly new artist, obviously extremely successful, but what do you think his family could get in something like this? Maybe it's like a $30 million payment. Is that just help the family in general?
Yeah,
It's like-
maybe. I think for it to just like a final cash in, I think
Mhm.
it would make sense. But yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Mhm.
I think when it comes to people like Juice WRLD, they're almost like too new. I feel like you can almost be too new for something like this, even though they're dead.
That's what I was thinking. Like, all right, too new.
Yeah, you can be maybe too new. Justin Bieber is like, again, probably like the closest where I'm like, this is pretty early. Like him and Katy Perry, because Katy Perry has a new album coming out soon.
Did not see that on my bingo card. I think they're from the last TV era, like the last era where they played music videos on TV.
Mhm.
If you're after that era, I think you're probably too new. But if you
Yeah.
had your music videos played on TV at some point, you're probably in the space where you can.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens when the Ludacris catalog gets sold. That'd be interesting.
I think he'll do that. That's the thing I realize is all of these artists are getting less and less money residually because streaming is so shitty.
Yeah.
And so it's like before there was the ringtone days. And so the checks you would get from ringtones would
Yeah.
be crazy because it's $1 a ringtone.
Yeah, Chingy was cashing out, seriously.
Chingy, Soulja Boy,
Yeah.
all doing great. Now with streaming, it's like you could have a song doing well, but your checks are probably
Yeah, they're minuscule. I remember Snoop was
Oh,
complaining
yes.
24/7 about like I can make $0 off.
he
of
did 1 billion streams and got $40,000.
Yeah.
It's like at that rate, a lot of these artists probably need to work otherwise
Mhm.
instead of relying on streams. And so I think this probably fixes that. Listen, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Who do y'all think is going to be the next one, and who you put at the top of the list? I know we said MJ and the Beatles.
Mhm.
I think Prince would be up there. I don't know if he would do
They
this,
would never sell it. I don't think they would ever sell it.
but he would be someone who I think his catalog would go for a lot. Someone I think also in this would be Pharrell.
Ooh.
I think Pharrell has a lot of different music from different places that his would sell for a lot. And then last but not least, maybe he's already sold it, but Justin Timberlake. I think
Yeah,
he's
that's
from the
interesting.
perfect era.
Yeah, that's so true.
The perfect era where it's like, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see.
Yeah, me too. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to the Soundbites, the part of the Album Mode podcast where we're talking about the music, the culture, the internet, and the legal disputes and the music culture that we have today. I'm making that a permanent fixture because it is a permanent
It
fixture.
is.
And thank you everybody for listening. And I think I want everybody to follow us on Twitter at AlbumOpod, Instagram at AlbumOpod, TikTok at AlbumOpod, obviously here on YouTube at AlbumOpod. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that red rectangle that you're seeing below this video and leave a comment. I want to hear, who's gonna sell for the most, and who's the most recent person that you think can sell their catalog for?
That's a good question.
Right.
Good
I think
question.
a Drake catalog sale. Well, he's got a weird deal going on with whoever he's signed with. But I like,
Oh, sorry. The answer is actually Adele.
yeah, that would be wow. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
How did we forget that?
That'd be-
Adele's the actual answer.
Yeah, that shit would be the amount of money Adele would make off of a catalog sale would be insane.
You hear Rolling in the Deep in a trailer 10 years from now, you're seeing that
It'd
movie.
be insane. It'd be insane. So yeah, it's Adele.
Yeah.
So if you can find somebody that maybe could supplant Adele, if it's an electronic artist, I'm curious about an electronic artist, how much they would sell their catalog for. Somebody like a Daft Punk.
Yep.
So especially because they're done. Anyways, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I want to hear everybody's comments. I want to see everybody's comments. I am in the comments lurking. I am replying to people in the official account, in the unofficial account. I am replying, and I would like everybody to say, "Oh, I want to like everybody to comment. I want to hear what you have to say." Adriel,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you know yourself and know your worth.
Later days.